Fawn Hoof Mummy Cave Tragedy. So imagine it's 1811 and you're deep inside a place called Short Cave in the rugged hills of south central Kentucky. You're not an explorer. Nope. You're a saltpeter miner, digging for the stuff that makes gunpowder go boom. Not exactly the dream job. But then your crew heaves up a large, flat slab of rock, and the universe decides to throw you the biggest plot twist of your life. Because she's sitting right there. Literally sitting, upright, composed, like she's been waiting centuries for someone to finally say hello. A Native American woman, perfectly preserved by the cave's steady, cool air. She's unusually tall for her era, about 5 feet 10 inches, with reddish hair and teeth so flawless she could star in a toothpaste commercial. And despite being completely intact, she weighs just 14 pounds. 14. That's less than my backpack in high school, and that thing didn't even come with a mummy inside. But then you look closer, and that's when the real treasure shows itself. Beside her is a knapsack containing 7 massive feather headdresses, each one crafted from large bird plumes. Another bag holds even more artifacts, each stranger and more impressive than the last. Around her neck hangs a string of 20 red-painted fawn hoofs, the detail that would eventually give her the name Fawn Hoof. She's also adorned with pendants made from an eagle's claw and a bear's jaw, plus 2 rattlesnake skins, one of them still rattling if you shake it. All signs point to someone with enormous status, a shaman, a leader, or both. But her body also shows something unsettling, a broken rib and an injured eye. Was it a ritual death? An accident? A fight? Or just the world's worst wrong place, wrong time moment? We'll never know. What we do know is that Fawn Hoof became an instant sensation. She was exhibited at 2 World's Fairs, turning Mammoth Cave into a must-see tourist trap and leaving us with a tantalizing mystery about the powerful woman with the necklace of fawn hoofs. Spirit Cave Mummy Story. When Sydney and Georgia Wheeler entered Spirit Cave in 1940, they weren't expecting anything more dramatic than another dusty excavation in Nevada's high desert. But the cave lived up to its name almost immediately. Beneath a thin layer of earth, they uncovered a body. And not just a body, but a burial so deliberate and so artfully arranged that it stopped both archaeologists cold. The man, somewhere in his 40s when he died, had been laid gently on his side, knees drawn in, wrapped with a level of care that suggested deep respect rather than simple disposal. His clothing alone made it clear they'd stumbled onto something remarkable. The man, later known as the Spirit Cave Mummy, wore moccasins crafted from 3 different types of animal hide, each piece stitched with quiet precision. Around him was a blanket made entirely from rabbit fur, and then came the real masterpiece, the mat he was sewn into. This was diamond-plated textile work so intricate, so impossibly clean in its geometry, that it looked like it could have rolled off a modern loom. Archaeologists suddenly had to rethink what early North American cultures were capable of, and for decades, the biggest question hung over the find: how old was he? For 50 years, the mummy sat on a museum shelf without an answer. It wasn't until radiocarbon dating became widely available in the 1990s that scientists finally tested him. The result hit like a hammer: 10,600 years old. That makes him the oldest mummy ever discovered in North America. Older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than most human stories we even know how to tell. And the textiles he was buried in? They remain the most complex ever found from that period anywhere on Earth. It's the archaeological equivalent of finding a smartwatch in a cave painting. But the story didn't end in the lab. The age of the mummy triggered one of the biggest cultural and legal battles in American archaeology. The Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe insisted he was their ancestor and demanded his return. Scientists insisted he was too significant to reinter. For 2 decades, the fight dragged on. until DNA testing finally confirmed what the tribe had said all along. Spirit Caveman was family. In 2016, after 10,000 years and a very long detour through academic debate, he was finally returned to his people. The Witches of Subeshi. Archaeologists working in China's Tarim Basin already know the region has a way of preserving the dead better than any civilization ever managed on purpose. The air is bone dry, the sand barely shifts, and time seems to just pause. So when a team excavating the Subeshi site, a windswept gorge east of Turfan, uncovered several female mummies, they expected something interesting. What they didn't expect were the hats. Tall, pointed, black felt hats that look exactly like the ones we associate with medieval European witches. The twist? These women lived between the 4th and 2nd century BCE, more than 1,000 years before Europe even started panicking about witches. So either history has irony, or the Subeshi women were way ahead of the trend. Nicknamed the Witches of Subeshi, these women weren't local to East Asia. Their light hair, fair skin, and facial features suggest origins reaching toward Europe or Siberia. And the hats were just the start. One woman was found wearing a single, heavy leather glove on one hand. Historian Adrian Mayer has argued this could be evidence of early falconry, that she may have been an eagle huntress, using a bird of prey to hunt across the plains. Try to picture it: a woman with pale hair, a sharp felt hat, and a golden eagle perched on her arm in ancient China. Honestly, it sounds like someone accidentally leaked concept art from a fantasy RPG.
This is so cool!
But the surprises continue. Among the male mummies, one man's chest had been stitched closed with horsehair, one of the oldest known examples of surgery anywhere in the world. The Subeshi culture had bronze artifacts, wheels, and high-quality wool long before these things became widespread in China. One of the women was even buried with delicate blue glass beads draped over her face, a detail that feels oddly modern and strangely intimate. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes that the Subeshi people weren't an isolated oddity. They were innovators, skilled, connected, and unmistakably distinct. And yet they still leave us with a question that refuses to settle. Who exactly were these people? And what's the real story behind those unmistakable witch-like hats? The Windover Bog Baby. In 1984, a construction crew was clearing land for a new housing development in Titusville, Florida, when a backhoe operator noticed something unusual in the bucket of his machine: a human skull. The work stopped, police were called, and what they initially thought was a crime scene turned out to be something far more profound. They had stumbled upon the Windover Bog, a small, unassuming pond that held one of the most important archaeological sites in North America. This wasn't a cave in the traditional sense, but an underwater one, a peat-bottomed pond where, for thousands of years, a prehistoric community had laid their dead to rest. The peat, a dense, oxygen-free muck, had preserved the bodies with incredible fidelity. Over 3 years, archaeologists excavated the remains of 168 individuals, each one carefully wrapped in fabric and staked to the bottom of the pond, between 6 and 10 feet deep. But among all the bodies, one discovery was particularly poignant. It was the body of a woman who had died in childbirth, and with her, the tiny, fragile skeleton of her baby. The infant, only a few weeks premature, was buried with a level of care that speaks volumes about prehistoric grief. The baby was placed on the mother's chest, and a piece of the same woven shroud that covered the mother was gently laid over the infant. But the most touching artifact was a small, smooth, and unworked stone, about the size of a child's fist, that had been placed in the baby's hand. It wasn't a tool, it wasn't an ornament, it was, for all intents and purposes, a toy. A final, simple gift from a grieving family. Radiocarbon dating placed the burials between 7,000 and 8,000 years ago. These people lived and died 3,500 years before the first pyramids were built in Egypt. And yet, in this underwater tomb, we see a level of emotional sophistication that is instantly recognizable.